Hello, everybody. Let's try that again. Welcome to October's Bitcoin for Beginners. I am joined here by Uli from Bitcoin Well, as well as Ben from BTCSessions. Whether you are brand new to Bitcoin, looking to get started with your very first wallet, or you want to level up your Bitcoin knowledge just a little bit more, this is the best place to be. And this is also we're going to provide for you a lot of great resources for you to continue to level up your Bitcoin knowledge after this call. We're going to be starting pretty much right away. 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern time is our schedule. And we don't want to wait too long because we got a Q&A session at the end. And that's where you can ask all of your questions directly to Ben or myself. So without further ado, let's get started. This is October's Bitcoin for Beginners, hosted by me, Connor Fitzpatrick at Bitcoin Well, and with our special guest today, BTCSessions. So what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be talking about why Bitcoin, specifically, why is Bitcoin the best form of money? And how will we determine that? What do we compare Bitcoin to? We're going to be comparing Bitcoin to fiat currency or government money or the money that you get paid with every other week. We're going to be explaining how Bitcoin is better in terms of inflation, censorship resistance, as well as math, or how the rules of Bitcoin are decided. And we're going to kind of compare that to fiat money and compare how those rules are decided. Ben today is joining us. He's going to be discussing how to store Bitcoin better, the best way, and the best way for you. Now, everyone kind of uses Bitcoin a little bit differently, which is why it's not a kind of a one-size-fits-all approach. There's definitely a little bit of, you kind of want to assess what you want to do, and that's how you can have the best Bitcoin situation for yourself and for what you want to do. Alrighty, so we're going to get started into it with inflation. Now, lately, this has become a bit of a scary word because everyone is looking at the grocery bill and being like, wow, why is everything so expensive? And you may have been told that's something like corporate greed or grocery stores or maybe even supply chains, which may play a little bit of a factor, that last point. But the core reason our prices are increasing is actually represented on this screen right here. These gray sections represent recessions in the last 25 years. And what we see is this blue line continuously increasing with little jumps here and there. This is actually the total number of dollars units in the economy. A good way to describe this is if you and all your friends walked into a grocery store, each with $100, and you're all racing to buy the apples. You know, if they have enough apples for all you guys, we'll spend like $1 per apple. But if all you guys walk into the grocery store with tens of thousands of currency units, walking into the store to buy the same amount of apples, well, guess what? An apple is probably not going to cost $1 anymore. It's going to cost $5. Now, does that mean an apple really became 5 times as expensive? Or is your unit of currency, your dollar, is actually kind of worth less? And what we're seeing is as the economy is kind of staying in a fairly similar kind of trajectory, but all of a sudden prices are jumping, it's not like everything is becoming suddenly more expensive. What the reality is that our currency is actually losing value. And this actually does not benefit like you or I. It is not helpful to go to a grocery store and have to pay more for things. But it's actually good for the government. Now, we do know how the government has a lot of debt, right? And so one way that the government can help make their debt less burdensome is actually to devalue currency itself, so that if they have $1 billion worth of debt, they say, you know what, $1 billion doesn't feel like $1 billion anymore. Maybe more feels like $900 million or $800 million worth of debt. That makes it kind of conceptually a lot easier for them to pay. And for us, we have to for us regular people, we have to negotiate higher salaries. We have to constantly fight against the fiat system to be able to earn more value for the amount of labor that we put out. And so, like, if we're thinking about that way, we're doing the same amount of labor, but we're getting the same amount of currency units, but those currency units are actually worth less. So it's almost like we're putting out the same amount of labor for less value. And I think value is kind of a better way to think about currency, because currency loses value all the time. It's actually designed. This chart shows how currency is actually designed to lose value on purpose at basically a steady rate, except for when there's an issue with the economy, and then they just print a lot of dollars very, very quickly. How does Bitcoin compare in the concept of inflation? Well, Bitcoin, you can't just make more Bitcoin if you feel like devaluing the currency, or if you feel like handing out a bunch of money to certain groups of people. Bitcoin has a very specific issuance schedule, we actually see the new amount of Bitcoin that are going to be coming up, and it goes up kind of faster, but then it gets more slower and slower. And I want to turn your attention to the bottom of our chart here, where we look at the dates. This is particularly unique because we actually know exactly how many Bitcoin are going to exist decades into the future. That gives us certainty of how Bitcoin's inflation rate changes over time and what that means for our savings when they're held in Bitcoin. I'm going to go back to the previous chart. This chart ends. We don't know how much money there is going to be in the future. This means anyone who's earning and saving in dollars is taking a risk because we don't know what's going to happen with inflation 10, 20, 30 years down the road. Turning our attention back to Bitcoin, we do know exactly how many Bitcoin there will be in the future. We know that it's never going to exceed 21 million. And we know that the amount of Bitcoin produced every day is going to be periodically decreasing. But every 4 years, as you can see on your screen here, the amount of new Bitcoin issued every single block and every single day is going to be cut in half. This ensures that your Bitcoin will not suffer the same fate as fiat currency that just loses value continuously year over year. Now, one of the ways that you can protect your money is by keeping your value in Bitcoin, not just because value is preserved by Bitcoin because Bitcoin doesn't have inflation, but your Bitcoin actually can't be taken away from you. In the last few years, especially in Canada, we've seen a few different ways where people had their bank account shut down. If you donated even $50 to the Canadian truckers protest, your bank account was shut down for an extended period of time with no warning. This means in today's day and age, you're basically unable to participate in our economy. And it doesn't really matter what your political view is or what the political cause you're supporting is. There will come a day where a government will find your political view as being the opposition, and then you could be economically censored. There are there are activities around the world where you can support those activities even today, and your account is at risk of being shut down. With Bitcoin, you have true freedom because you're actually the only person in control of your money. Banks rely on a system of intermediaries and middlemen who all decide if they're going to approve your transaction. How many of you folks here have probably gone to the bank in the last year, try to withdraw a few $1,000s, and then you're getting interrogated at the bank? What do you want this money for? Who are you sending it to? Why do you want to withdraw this? Like, it feels a bit invasive, and also it's your money. The bank shouldn't be giving you a hard time about using your own money. And Bitcoin never gives you a hard time about using your own money because you're not going through an intermediary. If I was to send money to Ben, I would send a Bitcoin transaction and Ben would receive it. There's no person in between that asks me questions or is going to decide whether or not that transaction goes through. Another really important historical event I want to turn your attention to is Executive Order 6102. This is my personal biggest fear of what may happen to Bitcoin in the future. And it's why I think the way that we recommend holding Bitcoin in self-custody is so important. In 1934, America was in pretty much the peak of the recession. They were financially struggling, and the government wanted a way to stimulate the economy. They wanted to just spend a bunch of money, build some stuff, build infrastructure. Kind of a typical thing we see the governments do nowadays. Back then, they didn't have the gold reserves to be able to spend all this money, and they didn't have a way like we do today where they continuously debase money. They didn't have the ability basically to print money to be able to pay for their infrastructure projects. So what they did was they said, okay, you know what, as of today, I think it was in August of 1934, the president signed Executive Order 6112 and said it is now illegal for regular folks like you and I to hold gold. If you held gold in the bank, goodbye. It instantly belongs to the government. They gave you some dollars for it with a little bit extra, and they sent you along your way. And at that time, gold went from $25 an ounce to $35 an ounce, and that was kind of like the deal they gave you. But gold today is over $4,000 an ounce. What happened to the US dollar since 1934? It lost 99% of its purchasing power. So basically, the government is forcibly giving you the worst money while they take the best money. And I think this is something that could happen to Bitcoin. This is one of the biggest risks, in my opinion, for leaving Bitcoin on an exchange, or another word for an exchange is like a bank that holds onto your Bitcoin. If any government signs a law saying that exchange has to give them your Bitcoin, well, you've lost it. But if you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, then you can make a decision on what you want to do with your Bitcoin. And Bitcoin's all about freedom. So I think the best way to store Bitcoin is on your own wallet. And because it's peer-to-peer and there are no middlemen, there's no one to stop or censor a transaction. It just goes through and you can do what you want. Uh, and fiat, as we talked about, is we were talking about has all this censorship, and Bitcoin does give you the ability to send those transactions directly. There is no way that it can be taken from you. It's unconfiscatable. Now, how do I know that Bitcoin is unconfiscatable? How do I know that there's only going to be 21 million Bitcoin? That's a good question if you're wondering it. And that's because, unlike most of our traditional systems where we rely in people in charge, there is no person in charge of Bitcoin. It's not like with Bitcoin, a new president or prime minister can get elected with a different view, and that means all the political opponents go to jail, or the person in charge changes their mind, or whatever happens, and they are maybe no longer, their cognition is falling because they're maybe too old. Bitcoin doesn't get too old. Bitcoin doesn't have an opinion that can change. Bitcoin is collectively agreed upon by all Bitcoiners. We have rules like that you see on screen, and I'm not a coder, so at first this might have seemed a bit scary and intimidating to me. But if you look at this a little bit closer, you see subsidy halving interval, 50 coin, subsidy is cut in half every 210,000 blocks, which will occur approximately every 4 years. This is pretty much what I described in that chart earlier. So all this code is actually telling us is just the amount of Bitcoin that are going to be, the total amount of Bitcoin that exists, and the amount of new Bitcoin that will be added to help us reach that 21 million Bitcoin supply cap. In this way, Bitcoin is secure, and the new amount of Bitcoin distributed is done so in a fair manner. Now, with our traditional system, we all vote, and like a 51% vote in the country can basically have an election go in. But Bitcoin was specifically designed so that, if you have two wolves and a sheep voting for dinner, the sheep doesn't get eaten. It's supposed to be an overwhelming majority. And with that overwhelming majority, you're going to have rules staying like the 21 million supply cap and the issuance schedule, basically ensuring that Bitcoin won't have inflation, and also that people's Bitcoin won't be taken away. If I start talking about some funny stuff, Ben can't just go and take away my Bitcoin because he doesn't like what I'm saying. And that's one of the things that makes Bitcoin so fair, is that everyone has, for the first time, complete equal access to use a monetary system. And that is just a very good thing for humanity, where I'm very optimistic that we'll see the positive effects of that in time. So in quick summary, Bitcoin is better because it is scarce and it is resistant to inflation. And not only is it resistant to inflation, but it's resistant to any form of censorship. Transactions cannot be stopped, and Bitcoin cannot be stolen from you. It's secured in a wallet, which we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And we know all these things to be true because Bitcoin is based on transparent math that anyone can verify, that anyone can vote on. And that is why it's so secure. We don't have to worry about some person changing their mind or a new person getting in charge. Bitcoin does not have a CEO. We are all the CEO. Bitcoin is rules without rulers. And now we will move on to the next section of how to secure your Bitcoin. And Ben, you're surely take it away.
Yeah. First off, thanks for having me. Happy to chat and looking forward to questions from people later on in the session. So keep those up here because we'll be taking them afterwards. But let's talk wallets. And I'm gonna kind of go by the slides here, but also I may go off on some tangents as well. So first off, I just want to quickly discuss the idea of what a wallet is, because Bitcoin is not exactly like a you are holding your own wealth. Even though it's digital, you are able to custody it yourself. But the term wallet is a tad misleading because the way that Bitcoin works is effectively a big ledger of who owns what. So if you think of a bank account or a bank, they have a record of this person has this much money, this person has this much money. And when there's transfers happening, the ledger gets updated to update the balance of those accounts. With Bitcoin, we're not relying on a central third party to do this for us. It's just a big ledger that anybody can host a copy of. It is pseudonymous, meaning that you don't necessarily have to link your name and personal identity to those accounts, but you can still see all of the Bitcoin that exists at any point in time and what addresses it sits in. And so since the money is on this big ledger that we all have access to, what what the hell does your wallet actually hold? Because it's not the money. So what your wallet actually holds is the keys to your money. So you can imagine you've got like a digital vault in the cloud, and you hold a key to be able to unlock that money. Only people who have the key can unlock your money. And what you're seeing on the screen right here, these 24 words, this is an example of a key to a digital vault. Human readable, easy to write down and secure. And these serve as a backup of your wallet. So typically somebody might download an application on their phone or computer, and that application will randomly create a key that will govern your Bitcoin, that will allow you to unlock your money and spend it wherever you see fit. It will say, hey, we've got your wallet here on your phone or your computer, but we've got the key on this device, but we want to have a spare key. We want to have a backup. So you can think of these words when you download a Bitcoin wallet and you write down these words. It's just in case you delete the app or something happens, you've got a spare. You can always go back to these words and recover your wallet. But they're very, very sensitive. As I said, this is the keys to your money. So we see these listed on the screen here. This is a perfect example of what you never do with your backup, with what's known as your seed words. These words, should anybody take a picture of them, should anybody get a copy of them, because your key is information, anybody with the same information can unlock what that key unlocks, which is potentially your life savings. So you never want to take screenshots of these. You never want to just leave them sitting out where people can have access to them, hold them up to cameras, anything like that. You want physical copies of this, and you want to keep them safe and away from prying eyes. As it says on the screen here, order of the words matter, but they are agnostic. If you download one Bitcoin app and it gives you your 24 words, sometimes it's 12, doesn't really matter as long as you have your words in order. If you migrate to a different Bitcoin app, those same words will still work. You can kind of think of it like if you are looking at a web page, you're looking at a website on the internet, it doesn't matter what browser you're using, which application you're using to see the internet. You can go to the same website and say the same information from Google Chrome or Safari or Firefox, whatever. With Bitcoin wallets, it's kind of the same deal. As long as you have your keys, you can migrate from wallet to wallet and see the same balance and be able to execute the same transactions regardless of the app that you're using. So some people keep these on paper. Some people keep these on the steel plate to really ensure that if there's a fire or something like that, you still have access to the information. All right. So we're talking about wallets, and I let you guys know that a wallet is just a key to your money. And there are different terms for how securely you store that key. So the first example here is a hot wallet. When you say a hot wallet, what it means is the keys to your money are sitting on a device that is directly connected to the internet. So that might be a phone, it might be your computer, but that is known as a hot wallet. And when your keys are on an internet connected device, that's okay for smaller amounts. It's day-to-day spending. It's, what you would be comfortable with as cash in your pocket walking down the street. And I think most of us would agree that you're not going to walk down the street with your life savings in your pocket. And so hot wallets are fine for day-to-day stuff, small amounts. Typically, they've got features that allow you to send and receive quickly with minimal fees, so very cheap and fast, but not for long-term savings, which allows us to move on to our next type of wallet. Cold storage wallets. Now, these function in terms of backup pretty much the same. You have a key to your money. As you're setting it up, it's going to give you a list of words that you're also going to write down and keep safe. But where do your keys, other than your backup, typically reside with cold storage It's not on an internet connected device. It's not on a phone or a computer. It's on a specialized device that does not directly connect to the internet. So I've got one example of one right in front of me here. If I can, kind of looks like a BlackBerry. This is called a cold card. And so basically what the job of this device is to create the keys to my money and store them securely. So like if somebody gets their hands on this, they try to access it and type in the PIN to open up the device. They only get X number of tries. I believe this is 13 tries of putting in my PIN before the device says nope and just wipes and becomes a brick. So it's a way of securing those words in a device that you can access regularly with minimal risk of somebody actually trying to hack their way into it. Furthermore, if somebody tried to tamper with the device and get information off of the chip or whatever, tried to hack into it, they would effectively destroy the chip where that information is stored before they could access anything by design. So functionally, the way something like this works is you would have an app on your phone or on your computer. And on that app, you can see your balance. You can add to your balance. But if you want to spend, you need the keys to your money. So you can think of it kind of like, again, imagine you have a digital safety deposit box. You can see into the box. It's transparent. In fact, there's even a little slot where you can always slide in more cash. So you can always see how much you have. You can always add more cash, but you can't open the thing unless you have the key. Your key is here on this device. And so if you want to spend, you need to unlock your digital lockbox with your keys, and then you can take out any amount that you like and send it wherever you like. Only somebody with the keys can add or can remove from the balance. Anybody can add to the balance as long as you let them know where to send it. So cold storage for ultra secure, long-term life savings kind of situations. So myself and my team, I've been, of course, doing a lot of step-by-step Bitcoin tutorials on YouTube for 9.5 years now. So 2016 was when I started a YouTube channel called BTCSessions. And so you can find tons of information there. In fact, the URL that's on the screen right now, btcsessions.ca/learn. There's some curated information there that allows you to, it shows Bitcoin Well, how to buy and sell. It shows various wallets for your mobile, for your desktop. It shows how to utilize this device here. And then it also shows some more advanced things. So some of you that start going down the rabbit hole, as so often happens, may be interested in all of the cool little tools and features and things that you can do beyond just getting a wallet and securing for your savings. You may get curious. You may nerd out a little bit with me and check out some of those other videos too. But at the very basic end of it, you can learn how to obtain Bitcoin, use it day to day, and how to secure it for the long term, just in the beginner section. And there'll be 3 videos to very simply line you up with that. You can also dive into tons of other stuff, but my team over at Bitcoin Mentor is listed at the bottom there on top of all of the free tutorial videos to check out there.
Wicked.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we just have a couple more slides. Thank you so much for that, Ben. Truly the master at explaining wallets. Ever since I've been in Bitcoin, you've been on YouTube alongside to help me set up my wallet. So I'm super stoked on that. Once you got your wallets and you are set up buying Bitcoin, Bitcoin Well is the best place to buy your Bitcoin. And yes, I work for Bitcoin Well, but there are a few reasons why that I believe that to be the case. First off is we do not hold on to your Bitcoin. You know, I talked about Executive Order 6102. That was basically a situation where banks gave the gold of their customers to the government. If you have your Bitcoin held in exchange, a similar thing can occur. Also, we've seen countless Bitcoin or crypto exchanges over the last several years collapse, losing Bitcoin along the way. Sometimes the founder disappears, runs off with the Bitcoin. Bitcoin was made so that you could be your own bank. And as Ben showed you with, controlling your seed phrase in a dedicated device, that's what you need to be your own bank when it comes to Bitcoin. You can't be your own bank with dollars and all that other stuff, but you can be your own bank with Bitcoin. And once you've got your device set up, it's essentially free to be your own bank. So like what Bitcoin was invented so that you can take control of your money. And there's not really a reason to give someone else control of your money, considering it's already free to do it yourself, and you're also being in a more secure manner. So whether you're in Canada or the United States, you can buy Bitcoin from Bitcoin Well. We have a really simple 1.2% spread. We don't have any other hidden fees like the other guys. So when the price of Bitcoin you see on the website, whether you're buying or selling, that is the price that you're paying. There are no other hidden fees. That is with your fee already included. If you are just starting out buying Bitcoin and you've got your wallet set up, or maybe you've just got a hot wallet set up on your phone, that's totally okay. Everyone starts off with a small amount, or a lot of people start off with a small amount of Bitcoin. So when they want to just buy like 50, a couple $100 just to see how it works out. I remember setting my first test Bitcoin transactions back in the day, and it felt a little bit new and scary for me at the time. But then it's just like email. It's just another kind of digital technology that I learned how to use. I use it all the time now, and it's quite easy. Like I don't think about logging into my email or sending an email. I don't really think about sending a Bitcoin transaction. It's a different process, but it's kind of just normal now, and it'll be normal for everybody eventually. Now, if you want to dive in and buy large amount of Bitcoin, maybe you're selling a house, selling a business that, houses and business both have a lot of costs to kind of keep them up. I mentioned before, Bitcoin is free to hold on to. It's a really good alternate asset if you're investing in something else that might require a lot of maintenance, a lot of effort, a lot of time. Bitcoin doesn't require those things. Bitcoin gives you time back. So if you want to make a large transaction, do have fees that go to as low as 1%. We do accept wire transfers for Canada and the United States, and actually most countries around the world. So even if you aren't buying Bitcoin yourself, you have maybe an uncle that is selling a business abroad, send him over our way. You'll get a kickback on his transaction, and we'll be able to service him, help him buy the hardest, best money known to man. So it's pretty simple. You send dollars, we send you Bitcoin. There's no, we hold on to your Bitcoin. It's just like the banks giving you a hard time, when you want to withdraw. The crypto exchanges can give you a hard time when you're trying to withdraw your Bitcoin. We don't do that. We just send you the Bitcoin, and then it's in your possession. It's basically the way that we think Bitcoin should be. If you want to make large transactions, you can contact us at Bitcoin Well Infinite. That is just our white glove service, premium service to help facilitate larger transactions and give you a little bit more kind of guidance along the way. If you have any questions, you can send us an email if you have any questions with Bitcoin Well, or how to, if you're struggling with some of your services, or if you have any onboarding assistance that you need, do reach out. You can also get quick access to us on Telegram, and you also have the BTCSessions.ca/learn, so you can continue to learn. And if you want to get some guided assistance there, they do have their mentoring service available. This does conclude our webinar presentation. We're open the floor to questions. I know we're also streaming on a few other services, so Uli's the man. He's going to help relay us those questions and make sure that your question's being heard.
Awesome, Conrad. Thank you so much. So I do have some questions in here. The first one's for Ben. So Ben, as someone who's helped thousands to learn about Bitcoin, what's the biggest misconception newcomers have about Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think one of the big hurdles is getting around the idea that the money isn't in the wallet and figuring out what a key is. So, I went through the description of, well, all the Bitcoin is on the ledger, or what's known as the Bitcoin time chain or the Bitcoin blockchain. All the money exists on that ledger. And so oftentimes people will say, okay, well, hold on, I've got this device, but then I've got an app on my phone and I can see it there. So to spend it, do I need to send it from the phone to the device, or the device to the phone and then to somebody? And it's kind of like, well, no, the money is not in either of those things. You have a key, you can see a balance, kind of like you're looking at the network saying, I own that balance that's on that ledger. Just in order to move it, you need to have your keys and you need to unlock it and say, this is where it's going. So it's a tricky thing to navigate a little bit. The idea of wallets, because the term makes sense, money goes into the wallet, but practically speaking with Bitcoin, that's not exactly what's happening.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ben. And so what is one piece of advice that you give someone just starting their Bitcoin journey?
Yeah, I would say, number one, don't get analysis paralysis. So don't think that you have to be perfect at everything before you take a single step. Quite often, the act of doing is the learning mechanism. And as you begin to practice and try things, you become more acquainted with it and you feel more comfortable. And so what I typically advise is you're going to want the lowest hanging fruit for skill set. Number one, where are you getting Bitcoin, right? How do you obtain it? And that's exactly what you guys do. Number two is a basic wallet. So learn how to send and receive Bitcoin just with an app on your phone. And it doesn't have to be with a lot of money. It can be with smaller amounts to get used to that. You know, download an app, try it out, receive some Bitcoin to it, and then try, how do I recover? We saw those backup words. See if a wallet with 20 bucks in it, delete it, download it again, hit recover, and then use your words. There's a little bit of skin in the game. You might sweat a little bit, but if it's with a small amount, you know, you're checking that you're able to do this. And when you see yourself recover a wallet with some funds in it for the first time, you go, oh, okay, cool. I got that. And then it makes you feel a bit more comfortable. So how to obtain Bitcoin, some wallet basics just with a regular app. And then once you're comfortable with those two things, then it's time to explore your actual long-term security. You know, picking a device that works for you that will allow you to do cold storage. So that's your life savings, something like this, or there's a multitude of other devices that will work just fine for you.
Awesome. Thank you. Here's a question for Conrad. This is a question from Victor. Where does someone go on the Bitcoin website to transfer your Bitcoin to a cold wallet? And how do you transfer your Bitcoin from Bitcoin Well to a cold wallet?
Yeah, Victor, great question. So if you've used different exchanges in the past, using us might feel a little bit different. For example, Coinbase, if you buy Bitcoin on Coinbase, Coinbase is a Bitcoin bank. So they are holding on to your Bitcoin for you. You'd have to like literally go to Coinbase and click like a withdraw or give me my money back now kind of button. And upon clicking it, they'll request for you to kind of have a place to send your Bitcoin. This will look different than, you know, the 24 words you saw. That's not what you want to be sharing with people. It will instead look like a random string of letters, kind of like if your cat walked across a keyboard and you're like, whoa, what are all these letters? That's basically what a Bitcoin, we call it a Bitcoin receiving address. So that's kind of like a public account number. That's the number that you would give to someone, and then they send the Bitcoin there. And that's what they'll request for you at Coinbase. At Bitcoin Well, we require you to provide for us a wallet upon purchasing. So you don't have that intermediate step of asking for your Bitcoin, basically begging for your money. We automatically send you Bitcoin directly to your wallet every single time. So if you're in Canada, if you're buying through e-transfer, which is, you know, the easiest way to send money around in Canada, you send an e-transfer, we pretty much instantly convert that to Bitcoin, send that to your wallet, and we kind of batch our outbound Bitcoin transactions, basically meaning we send out Bitcoin transactions every few hours to save you fees. If you're in the United States, money moves a little bit slower in the United States, so you'd have to do an ACH transfer. That'll take a couple of business days to land. Upon landing, similar process. We automatically convert that into Bitcoin, send that out to your wallet. You'll receive it pretty shortly. We kind of batch, so it takes a few hours to get sent out. But upon being sent out, you'll receive it within about 20 minutes. If you are not receiving your Bitcoin right away, or if you're having any issues receiving your Bitcoin, definitely do reach out to our support team. There might be something we might want to take a look at with your account.
Awesome. Thank you, Conrad. The next question is for Ben. So Ben, what's the most valuable lesson you've learned from your years in the Bitcoin space?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think for me, one of the most valuable lessons is really two things. Trying not to worry about timing. A lot of people get caught up with, oh, I'm gonna wait till it's low and then buy some, and then wait for it to go high, and then I'll sell it, and then I'll buy it again low. Like if you're constantly trying to time things, it tends to be, in my opinion, a losing game. And furthermore, recognizing that it's not the dollars that I want in the first place. Like that the game of trying to time it is effectively saying, I want more dollars than I have right now. But in reality, I don't want dollars at all. Bitcoin is the valuable thing. Our dollars are so broken that you can no longer just be good at a thing, spend less than you earn, and save. You're forced to become this professional investor and hand money over to people who you then pay to figure out where to put it, so that you have a hope in hell of making it to your retirement. Whereas Bitcoin brings us back to an age where you can once again just be good at something, spend less than you earn, and save in a money that nobody can print. And that's a pretty good recipe for success. So I think, again, don't try to time things, don't try to get cute with it, and also don't be chasing the, oh, I want more dollars. Just recognize that Bitcoin is the better money, and you can just save in it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ben. One question that I always love to ask in this webinar is, what are your thoughts on non-custodial exchanges?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's kind of the way to be, right? Like the idea that you are corralled into best practices out the gate is the important thing. Like when as Conrad was describing, if you want to, buy Bitcoin and have it go to your, whether it be a hot wallet or a cold wallet or whatever, when you're going to Bitcoin Well and you're saying, okay, there's dollars here, I want to purchase Bitcoin. It's not, I want to purchase Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin Well is holding the Bitcoin, and then I have an extra step of saying, if I want to, I'm going to move it over here where I hold it myself. No, Bitcoin Well is saying the best practice is you hold it yourself. And so we're not going to give you the option of leaving it with us, because that would be irresponsible. And so I think by design, that should be the way things are. It's I'm handing over dollars, and for some reason, unbeknownst to me, somebody's giving me back Bitcoin in exchange for those worthless dollars. I want them myself. I don't want the same people to hold on to them for me. So yeah, I think it's the most responsible way of obtaining Bitcoin is a non-custodial exchange experience.
Yeah, I just want to add on to that as well. I've had a couple situations where friends have bought Bitcoin in the past, and they've held it on the custodial exchange, which is like, the Bitcoin bank I was mentioning before. And like they had a few $1,000s on there, which, it is a substantial amount of money, but it's not like, be all end all. But when he lost all that Bitcoin because the exchange collapsed, he told me that was actually half a Bitcoin, which is worth way more than a few $1,000s today. And I think an analogy I like to use for why you shouldn't use a custodial exchange, even if you're buying Bitcoin, you say, well, I'm immediately going to withdraw the Bitcoin. That's kind of like driving without a seatbelt and like, oh, well, if I'm going to get into an accident, I'll put the seatbelt on real quick. Like, you want to always be wearing a seatbelt. Like, you want to always be wearing your bike helmet. You don't want to be biking around carrying your bike helmet. And then if you're about to crash, try to quickly put it on. Like, that's not going to work. You want to be safe first. And then you will just, if something bad happens with the exchange, if something bad happens with Bitcoin Well, like, you have your Bitcoin. Like, we never have it. So like, you don't have to worry. And that's the safer way to buy Bitcoin.
And history is littered with examples of exchanges that people thought were more than secure. It would seem that kind of every cycle, there's a new example dating back to when I first started looking at it. But I remember the largest exchange in the world, Mt. Gox, implodes. All that Bitcoin gone. Fast forward another cycle, people are saying, "Oh, we're beyond that. We've matured." And sure enough, the largest exchange in Canada, Quadriga CX, blows up. There's literally a Netflix documentary on it. Fast forward another cycle to 2021. We're way beyond that. The guy who created this exchange, his parents are regulators or higher ups, and this is so well regulated, and he's in Congress testifying, and sure enough, FTX blows up, and they were just literally taking people's money and buying Bahamas real estate with it. Like, it was a full-on fraud. So yeah, if you think it's not possible that we move beyond it, or that you're somehow safer on an exchange, you're not. You're much safer taking personal responsibility for your money.
Absolutely. Self-custody is most definitely the way. Now I have a question for both of you. So what's your go-to recommendation for a beginner-friendly Bitcoin wallet, and why do you prefer it? And then also, if you have a preferred one in Canada versus one in the US, you can also let us know.
I bet I'll let you take this one first. You're definitely the expert in the wallets.
I have so many wallets. Okay, so I have different wallets for different purposes. What I will say is there was a commonly used Bitcoin wallet that it used to be custodial, and we've been talking about how self-custody is the way to be. But they did just do an update that gives you self-custody within the wallet, and it does make it pretty slick and easy. It's something called Wallet of Satoshi. And again, it used to be that they would hold all the money for you, but now if you go into the settings, I made a video on it, so you can just search on YouTube Wallet of Satoshi BTCSessions, and just later in the video there's a little button that in the settings that says use self-custody, and it will do exactly as we described. It'll give you 12 words, you write them down, and you keep them safe, and then you have your hot wallet for day-to-day use. The reason I say that one is nice and simple is because it gives you what's known as a lightning address, which it looks like an email address, but it's for money, and it works really well with Bitcoin Well. When you go to withdraw, you can do even small amounts going to Wallet of Satoshi, and the self-custody version, of course. Make sure you do that, and that one's super slick. In terms of other ones, I often use, again, I have my cold card here, that hardware device. The one that I tend to use that with the most is called Nunchuck Wallet. And so I'm able to just pair this device with my phone using Nunchuck, and then I can kind of manage it from there. So I quite like that one as well.
Awesome. On my end, I think what I would recommend to people and what I kind of share as my preferences really depends on who I'm talking to. Bitcoin very much isn't kind of like a one size fits all. It's kind of like when if a friend comes up to you and I say, "Hey, I want to buy a car. What car do you recommend?" I say, "Well, what do you want to use it for?" If you're just saving, if you're planning on saving for Bitcoin for a long period of time, and you want to really prioritize security, then I think the cold card is the most important, the best way to go forward. If you want something that's a little bit kind of more in between, then one wallet that I like to use is called the Blockstream Jade wallet. It's quite simple. They have a few different versions, and they all in effect do the same thing of managing your seed phrase. The cold card would be a little bit more secure, a little bit more kind of focused on what you want to be doing with it, whereas the Jade's a little bit more general, a little bit easier to use. And then if I'm recommending a wallet to someone who's like very new to Bitcoin, maybe a little bit older, I might even recommend them a new device called the BitKey. This is a little bit new, and I'm kind of almost going out on a little bit of a leap on this one because they don't actually use a seed phrase. They use this kind of special thing called multi-sig, where they basically break up your seed phrase or your key into a few fractions, and all you need is 2 of the 3 fractions to be able to authorize a transaction. You have one on your device, one on, this is my computer mouse, but imagine this is the BitKey, has a touch ID on it, and basically you're validating the transaction that way. It's supposed to make Bitcoin easy to use for folks that maybe are a little bit worried about using a seed phrase. I would recommend this only for if like maybe you're getting your mom or someone a little bit newer on the Bitcoin. But I think having a seed phrase is really valuable because if something happens to your device or that company, you're not reliant on any single entity to be able to provide you that hardware service. You can take your 12 or 24 words, plug them into a Cold Card, a Jade, into Numchuck software, into kind of any wallet, kind of like how Ben mentioned how it's a website, and you can think of it as a website, and you can access that website from different internet browsers. So those are kind of the three I would recommend. It really isn't a one size fits all. So I hope that's not a cop out answer, but in the end of the day, there's a wallet for everyone and for every kind of thing you want to do with Bitcoin.
Absolutely. And Ben, I would actually love to get your input on that. What do you think about the BitKey?
Yeah, I've used it. I've done a video on it as well, and I think that it is. It's very clear who the market is for, right? Like it's focused on people that may not be as technically inclined and want a convenient, easy to use setup. It's very, very simple. There's a thumbprint sensor. It's NFC. It's tap. And they've got their kind of their BitKey app that pairs with it. And so I think it's definitely a convenient and easy to use solution. Of course, I'm a nerd, so I like my weird little BlackBerry looking thing here. And it's, it can be a little bit intimidating using something like this versus a BitKey. So, I mean, with anything, there's going to be trade-offs. Whenever there's convenience, there's typically like a degree of either transparency or security trade-off. When something's more complex, usually you have a lot more control and security with that. So the most important thing is doing something is better than doing nothing, and there's going to be a spectrum of options along the way.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for that answer. I do have another question here from our Q&A. Just give me 1 sec. The question is regarding Wallet of Satoshi. What about the Spark implementation they use for self-custody that make all transactions visible to anyone?
Yeah, I mean, it's effectively the same as doing something on chain. So a regular, I mean, and there's some nuance here, but Lightning typically is normally more harder to audit, harder to see what's going on. When it was Wallet of Satoshi custodial, what you had was Wallet of Satoshi could say this person with an account here has this account and this balance, and here's all their transactions. So Wallet of Satoshi saw that information. With the Spark implementation, it's and again, this is getting a little complex, but there's more transparency to Spark, and again, the transparency comes with convenience. And so, yeah, there's always going to be nuance there. There's a really good write-up from a guy named Seth for Privacy that just went through a bunch of the privacy implications. I would say that in general, if you're using on-chain regular Bitcoin transactions, you're also going to have to be cognizant of the Bitcoin blockchain is transparent. And so as you move money around, depending on how you utilize it, there are privacy implications to be thoughtful of there too. Not to scare anybody off, but just think of it as if you're going to pay at a merchant or something like that, you don't want to whip out, like, if there was such thing as $1 million bill, you don't want to buy a candy bar with $1 million bill because the merchant sees the change too. So there's lots of things to consider with privacy. If privacy is paramount for you, then there's going to be some other options out there. So something like Aqua Wallet uses Liquid in the background and does these funky swaps and stuff like that. The long and the short of it is the amounts are shielded, so you can't see the amount being transacted. And the swap mechanism in the background also gives a degree of privacy. You can do things like coin join on chain. There's a whole bunch of privacy stuff that I've made videos on as well. So again, you're balancing privacy versus convenience when you're looking at that.
And on the note of privacy, if you are looking to buy Bitcoin and store it and use it privately, Bitcoin Well, we actually offer a really cool service that allows you to buy Bitcoin privately through our ATMs. You may have seen a Bitcoin ATM out in a mall or a gas station before. These all typically have a pretty high fee of about 15 to even 20%, which is like pretty high and makes it pretty unusable if you're looking to make large amounts of transactions potentially. That could maybe not be what you're looking for. But we do have a really cool feature called the Light Account, which pairs with our Bitcoin ATMs, enabling you to buy Bitcoin privately at a net rate of only 7%. Now, 7% for private Bitcoin is like kind of unheard of. It's extremely good. It's limited to only about $9.50 per transaction, $3,000 for the day. But you are able to do that. I think Ben even has a video on how to make a Light account. All you need for that is a Bitcoin Well account that only has a Bitcoin address, no other information needed. And then you just connect that to one of our ATMs, insert cash in one of the ATMs. The cash appears now on your account. Buy Bitcoin when you're ready to, and you can even pay bills and even sell Bitcoin for e-transfer all through your private account. So yeah, there's definitely a really interesting privacy angle to Bitcoin as well that is worth exploring. And now that you have an option to be able to onboard Bitcoin privately to your wallets.
Awesome, guys. Great answers. Now I just want to kind of change the perspective a little bit and then just kind of talk about Bitcoin's role, across the globe. Ben, you mentioned you were going to go to a conference in Africa. So I just wanted to get your input on how you see Bitcoin's role in these different economies like Latin America, Africa, or any other ones.
Yeah, it's very interesting seeing how people look at Bitcoin from place to place very differently. In the West, obviously, a lot of people tend to look at it as a speculative investment. That's your average person's read on Bitcoin. And now as you get down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, that begins to shift a little bit and you begin to understand it and its censorship resistant qualities and stuff like that. But for the average person in the West, they're going to say, oh, I'm getting Bitcoin to get more dollars, which we discussed before. I do a lot of work with the Human Rights Foundation. And what we do is we have these quarterly webinars where we educate human rights defenders and political dissidents from around the globe and show them how Bitcoin is a tool for human rights and freedom. And a lot of times these people are living under dictators, and the first thing that a dictator will typically do with political opposition is shut down their bank accounts. They will go and say, oh, if we can cut off their funding, then they can't do anything, which is often true. And so we're teaching them that Bitcoin is a lifeline in those situations. And so I've educated a ton of different people. Some examples of this, there's a girl named Masi from Iran. And she spearheads a movement of women in the region that protest a lot of the regulations around women having to cover their hair with scarves and stuff like that. And so their protests will be as simple as just letting their hair out in public. And oftentimes these women will be thrown in prison for that. And so she they've tried to kill her many times, to the point where I met her in person and actually interacted with her for the first time just 3 weeks ago in Nashville. I taught her to get her first Bitcoin wallet. She's coming at it from the perspective of censorship resistance. She can get money to any of these women that are part of her organization that are hosting these protests instantaneously across the globe with very minimal fee and no possibility for censorship. This is a girl who she now is based in New York, and just this year they sent thugs with AK-47s to stand outside of her apartment in New York and gun her down. They were luckily caught before she came out of her building. This is the degree of the type of people that are finding Bitcoin as a lifeline. And so there's countless stories of people around the globe that are not coming at this necessarily from the number go up perspective, but from the freedom perspective. And even in parts of Africa, where they are coming at it from that perspective, it's from the perspective of hyperinflation, where they can't get to the store fast enough to get rid of their money before the prices continue to go up. I think there's 15 African nations that are still under something called the CFA franc, which is a currency that's created specifically by France, and all of these countries are forced to use that currency. Side note, these are I think 11 of these are the poorest countries on earth. And the way that it works is France creates the currency, says you have to use this, and at any time they can devalue the currency. They can print more units. They also have like a chokehold on the nation, saying we get first dibs on any of your resources, and they can buy the resources with the printed currency. So they basically are just pillaging all of these nations. The last person that stood up to the CFA franc movement and was president of one of these countries was assassinated in the end of the 60s. And so they've got a stranglehold on this whole, colonialism is alive and well via the CFA franc system. So it's pretty wild to see what people can still get away with these sneaky things. And we don't experience it to that degree in North America, but it still functions here. There's still like a steady whittling away of the fruits of your labor. So the value is from Bitcoin. It can come from many different perspectives, and it just depends on where you are and what your situation is, which of those perspectives you see first.
Yeah, I think that
was
such a powerful point.
A great answer, Ben. Thank you so much. Do you see a country or a region that would surprise the world with rapid Bitcoin adoption?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely I'm trying to think of some of the most unique things I've come across traveling. I mean, I was kind of surprised at how many places you could pay in Bitcoin in Prague, in the Czech Republic. Now, I shouldn't have been surprised because it's the birthplace of a number of different Bitcoin companies and initiatives, but they've got a payment system that is able to be plugged into and paid for with Bitcoin, and all these businesses are part of this general payment system. So like there's countless restaurants and stores and stuff like that if you have this one app, you can just pay through Bitcoin externally, which was really cool. I have been down to El Salvador, to Bitcoin Beach specifically. And yeah, I mean, in Bitcoin Beach, you can pretty much just live on Bitcoin. But I mean, what I will say is I think some of the most interesting stuff is where individuals are just spearheading local initiatives. I think that, to me, is one of the things that I'm excited about. We're trying to, I'm in Calgary, and we're trying to do something like that here with the SAP market that we hold a couple times a year, and we just have a ragtag group of Bitcoiners. We've got farmers, we've got tradesmen, we got artists, we've got all kinds of different people from different walks of life. But a couple times a year, we'll get together with 40 or 50 merchants, and everybody's accepting Bitcoin, and we're frequenting each other. So I love seeing initiatives like that. They've got a pretty good movement in Vancouver, a lot of like on the ground brick and mortar adoption. I'm just excited to see, how these things evolve and how these Bitcoin communities begin to branch out.
That is so interesting. I do have one last question. I think this is for both Ben and Conrad. What's the most inspiring story that you've heard from someone using Bitcoin to improve their life?
Conrad, I'll let you go first here.
So how I first heard about Bitcoin was actually when my friend started a business mining RuneScape gold, which I thought was like, I was like, how do you sell this? How do you buy it? And he was actually using Bitcoin to sell this. This was a few years ago. So, moving Bitcoin around maybe a little bit different than it was today. What I was so impressed with was that he was able to hire people in disadvantaged nations that have high unemployment rates, especially among the youth. And he was able to pay these people like double their dailies, like double the average daily salary just for them mining Bitcoin from their computer, which basically allowed them to get a chance at an income that they would have been fighting for otherwise. This was back in 2016, 2017, and Bitcoin done tremendously well since then. I've even checked in with this fella and said, heck, hey, are all these folks, spending their Bitcoin or something hodling it? Or like, I was checking in over the years how things were going because I was curious. And he said, surprising amount of these wallets were still like filled in like no sell transactions. So just because of how well Bitcoin has performed financially against fiat currencies, these folks had a massive improvement to their financial well-being. And I think, if you're born and raised in somewhere like Canada, United States, we have pretty safe governments that typically watch over us, and we might feel kind of safe here. And these things about these problems that Bitcoin helps solve might seem a little bit foreign to us. But if you're someone that has experience with maybe a tyrannical government, a communist government, seizure of your banking assets or any of your property, then the use case, then the need for Bitcoin becomes so much more apparent. So I would say just anyone that's basically received Bitcoin in kind of these problem nations are getting a lifeline that was historically never available. So I think maybe there's not one success story I'm thinking of, just kind of more countless success stories. And that's really what Bitcoin offers.
That's awesome. I like that one. Yeah, there's a multitude of stories I could tell here. Maybe I think I'm gonna lean into this one as kind of more a personal experience in educating my kids, and how I'm relating Bitcoin to that. So, my daughter's 8 now, and so I'm using Bitcoin to educate her on money in 2 capacities. One, she gets a weekly allowance depending on what chores she does. And so what I've done is her allowance every week, she gets half in cash in dollars and then half in Bitcoin. And the Bitcoin is kind of like a forced savings mechanism. And so what she has seen over time is that the Bitcoin that she has grown in value. And, she gets excited every time she sees, oh, wow, it's worth this much now. Cool. And so the goal here is that as she gets older and older, she's going to see 2 things. One, that Bitcoin as a saving mechanism continues to appreciate in purchasing power. But 2, the opportunity cost of having spent the same amount in dollars. She could have doubled her money. So we're going to have multiple references here. We know exactly how many dollars that you made over this period of time. And that amount of dollars, half of it is now worth this. The other half you spent as that actual amount of dollars at the time. But had you saved, you could have had this amount worth. And so she's going to have this reference of her childhood and having saved and benefited from it. But what I hope that imparts on her later is, again, opportunity cost of do I want this thing right now? Do I want to blow some money on this knickknack? Or maybe I want to save it for something better later on. The second thing that I've done is she has a Lightning wallet, and I'm teaching her just the tiniest bit about Bitcoin mining. And so I have a couple just small little devices on my shelf, and they're like yay big, super cheap. They cost a couple $100 or something like that. But I'm just telling her like, hey, this device, it mines Bitcoin, and this is now yours. And every day you're going to see a little bit of Bitcoin come into your wallet. And sure enough, she does. She sees like 50 cents pop in there every day, just like clockwork. You have 50 cents, you mine some Bitcoin or somewhere around there. And so she's seeing that come in. And then she's also seeing that appreciate over time. So it's just a segue into her learning about a different form of money And I mean, when I say different form of money, she's never been alive in a world where Bitcoin didn't exist, which is kind of mind-blowing. So anyway, she's 8. That's what I'm doing to kind of teach her and hopefully improve her life down the line. My son's still young and 4, but the same experiment will play out with him too.
That's an awesome story. Bitcoin is definitely for the future, and your kids know that. Like, it's not, they don't have to be taught it. They're just like experiencing it in real time. That's super cool to hear. Everyone, that does bring us to the end of the hour. We went a little bit over. We had our guest today, Ben from BTC Sessions, brought us a ton of really cool insights and really interesting stories. I loved hearing you talk about the different wallet setups, and also about just how you think Bitcoin's going to be used by different nations all over the world. I think hearing about I think it was called the CFA franc you mentioned, hearing how some people are set up in an economy, in a monetary system that is so working against them. And we think, oh, ours is working it for us. Well, it's working against us. Just theirs is working against them with like massive overdrive. But we're all all of our money is being intentionally debased for the government's benefit and not for our benefit. And Bitcoin really is our tool to fight that. Self-custody is how you hold on to that tool and make sure it's ready there for you in the future. And if you want to get better at self-custody, definitely do check out Ben at btcsessions.ca/learn. I'll also be sending a follow-up email to everyone who is here and who attended in the Google event. If you are watching online and where we're streaming this, do check us out at our YouTube. That's where we're going to be putting the recording for this video. Thank you so much for everyone who came on by. We're going to be having another Bitcoin for Beginners next month. We're going to be aiming for kind of the same regular cadence of around the second Wednesday of every month. So we'll see y'all then. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. And Ben, thanks again for coming on by.
Cheers. Thank you, guys.
Alrighty.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.